Guarantee that the car's going to drive and perform a heck of a lot better now that we've got a full amount of oil back in the shop. Hi guys, Brett here from Hearns Hobbies, and today we're going to have a look at the Kyosho Fazer Mk2. So I'm going to do a series of videos of servicing and maintaining your car and getting the best out of it. So it's a spec racing on-road class, and for those of you who don't race them, they're an awesome little recreation machine and car park basher. So what we're going to do this episode, we're going to do the shock absorbers. So let's have a look. So I've got my 9 steps toolkit off here to the side. And these Kyoshos are fantastic in that they really do have 2mm screws throughout and almost over the entire car. So I'll just get my parts tray. Right here, got my parts tray. So I'm going to take the rear, we'll do the rear shocks today. So I'm just going to go and unscrew it from the shock towers. If we can get in there and have a look, like so. I don't like to use power tools on my cars or builds. There's no need for it, and the threads on these and the plastics are fantastic on these Kyosho cars. You just run the risk of damaging the thread and the screw itself. Alright, got the top mounts out, get the bottom mounts off. The good thing about these cars is this is out of the box assembled, so this is really good. This one here's seen a couple race meets. This is one of our youngest members of our race team's car. He's kindly lent it to me to do some tutorials on. So we're going to get these rear shocks off, and then I'll put the car itself to the side, and we'll go in depth on how I rebuild these shocks, because they are quite a conventional oil-filled unit, which is really good and part of the reason that they perform so well indeed. So I'll take my cleaning brush here and I'll get these springs off of the shock. You can see here I'm working over a cloth. Let's get my pliers out here, get the preload collar off like that. That's used to set your ride height, and they come with a wide range of various tuning parts in the box, so you can set the ride height. You can see here all the dirt and muck, and that's nothing untoward, that's just a lot of grime and stuff that's built up over time, I'd say. So the reason I like to give them a good clean down first is so we don't actually introduce any dirt into the inside, because we're actually trying to clean them and rebuild them. So last thing we want to do is make them dirtier. And I generally just do the front and rears as a pair, rather than doing all 4 at once, just in case you've got different springs front and rear and it saves you confusing the matter, getting it wrong. Excuse me while I just get all this road grime and muck off, and it pays to keep them nice and clean anyway. Go ahead and brush the body off here with my old cleaning brush. This cleaning brush has seen lots of use over the years. It's featured in many of my videos. Go ahead, get all this grime off and away. Get it off of the spring retainers too. You can use an old toothbrush, is perfect for this sort of stuff. But it does aid, like I said, the main reason that I do it is just to ensure that no dirt goes in there, and it all goes back looking really neat and tidy. Okay, so we've got that all brushed down and nice and neat. The next thing I'm going to do is actually measure the length of the shocks. Now the reason I do that is because I'm going to take the shock ends off, and I've just got some mechanical verniers here, and I can tell you right now that we are at 12mm. So I know when I reassemble them that they are the way they were, and I can get it perfect left to right, which they aren't at the moment, which is fine. So we'll go for the longer measurement here, which is 12mm. I'll put those to the side and then we can go ahead and start disassembling. Okay, so the first step I'm going to do is get the eyelets off and get everything nice and loose on the body itself. Now I'm using the soft jaw pliers for this. This is the Aromax unit. And what the beauty in this is I can actually use it on the shock shaft here, this highly polished steel chrome bit, without actually causing damage to it. Last thing we want to do is use pliers on there or something like that and risk scratching the surface, which will tear the O-ring. Now I'm going to zoom in the overhead here if I can, show a bit more detail of what we're actually doing as we go through the process. Okay, so I'll loosen off the top cap here, like so. And this is where it's going to start to get messy because the oil will come out. Now they're not like big 8 scale off-road shocks, they only hold a little bit of oil, so I just put it in the corner of the rag, like so. We'll get that out. Now I'll loosen the bottom to make sure, I'll take that right out actually, to make sure that there's no preload on the O-ring. So when I run the piston through the thread through the O-ring, it does the least damage as possible. Here we go. So there's our shock shaft and our piston out. We've got our shock body. Now the oil that came out of this was really clean, and that's indicative of plastic bodied damper units or shock absorbers, because there's no metal in there to grind away. The shock shaft is definitely not bent. We can see that just by moving it. It's got a really nice finish off it, and there's no debris in the pistons. That there is the shock piston, and they are fully adjustable in these cars, but it is factory assembled and got kit set up at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and take the O-ring out. Just going to use, now they're just a single O-ring shock absorbers, these units, which is good because you get less friction, and they don't seem to leak. They seem really hardy. So really good quality little O-rings. I'm just wiping it over the cloth here. Now I'm going to use some shock and O-ring grease. This is XTR brand. This is really good stuff. I use this on all my builds. Nice new factory seal, like so. And it is really good quality stuff. Now what the grease does is it actually protects the O-ring from the shock oil, because the shock oil, being silicon, can react with the silicon in the O-ring and cause it to expand and bind, giving you really sticky shocks, like so. And I like to put a little bit of grease on the thread itself, and that's what we call the shock cartridge. And then we'll get, I just unwind this a little bit until it clicks, because it's a very fine thread and you don't want to cross thread the shock body. So that's fantastic. We'll just start that off. Then I'll dip the threaded part of the shock shaft in the oil, in the grease, sorry, smear that on, and then I'll run that through the O-ring, and that should release a little bit of extra oil, grease that we can see there. Put that in a tub. There we go, wipe that off. Do that up. That is lovely. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and wind this one back on. Now I did measure it before, so we know exactly what we're looking at, of 12 mil diameter, shock length diameter. That's from the end of the eyelet to the bottom of the shock body, like so. A little bit more, half a turn here. There we go, perfectly. There's our 12 mil right there. And we'll do these up just by hand. No need to use the pliers, and we can run it through the motion, make sure that it's not sticking, binding or anything like that. Lovely, now it's time to get some oil in. So I actually don't know what the kit oil is in these, but I'm going to go with a 30 weight because it's right in the middle of the road, and I'm using an oil that I know, just so that if I change it in the future, I know whether I want to go a thinner, a lighter weight oil, or a thicker, heavier weight oil. That's just the silicone oil there. Filling up the body. We'll pull the piston down. One big air bubble should hopefully come up, like so. We'll fill it to the top. There we go, we nice and smoothly take it to the stroke. And then I'll put this one to the side while I get on the other one. And again, we'll do that on camera. Whoops. Now don't mind if you make a mess with this. Get rid of all the air bubbles out of there. It's actually got none in it. I'm just going to go ahead and assemble it. They're that good. So then I'm going to put the bladder in. And what I like to do is I put the bladder in from the side, sort of push it down with my finger, like so. And then I'll bring the shock shaft up while holding the bladder until I feel the piston touch my finger, the other side of the bladder. And that's when I know that I'm up the full range of stroke. And I'll go ahead now and put the cap on. Now this will take a couple times to, again, I wound it backwards until it went click. Just go down. You want to stop if you feel anything untoward with the thread, like so. Got a bit of oil here. It's always nice to work over a rag, a cloth. We'll give it a wipe down and then see how we're looking. Now what we're going to be looking for is rebound, and we want to try and get rid of rebound as much as possible without introducing any air. So rebound is when it's over full, and you can see here how it's extending down under its own. That's telling me that the shock is a little bit over full and that the shock unit itself is rebounding. So I'm going to bleed that again, and it's as simple as cracking the top nut, just about a turn, and then going all the way up till the piston stops on the body. Sorry, the shock eyelet stops on the body, and then while holding it, I'll do it up again. That might take a couple of turns, like so. You can see now how it's really slow now, so it's really just a minor adjustment now. Do the same process again. Hold the shock shaft up, unwind the cap, and wind that one down. Third time lucky, and that's exactly what we want to see. See how it's not pushing back now? That's exactly what we want. There's no air in there, there's no squealing, it's not coming out. It's beautiful. Okay, give that a bit of a wipe over and we can get this one assembled. The reason I'm going to assemble this one now quickly, so I don't get it confused with which one I've rebuilt and which one I haven't. Let's go ahead here, put my spring collar on, the spring itself, the bottom spring retainer, and then my preload collar on the top, like so. There we go. That is a nice little damper unit. No air, feels nice and beautiful. Put that in the shock stand. Then we'll move on to the second unit. And we'll do that just to run through the exact process. So loosen off the fittings, which is the cartridge at the bottom and the top cap. It shouldn't really be tight. You might need to use your pliers on it to crack it. We've measured the length. We know it's got to be 12mm shock shaft length. So I'll go here, take off the bottom eyelet. I'm going to remove the bottom, the cartridge cap, like so. Then the top cap and the bladder. Really nice finished aluminium little cap here on these. Great quality product. Go ahead, we'll take the bladder out of the top here, little diaphragm or bladder. And then I'll go ahead and I'll empty the oil out. I'll do it on camera so we can see how clear it is. Very, very clear and clean. Get that oil out. Take the shock shaft right out of the body. We'll give it a little bit of a wipe over. Like so. I can see if it's bent and not working smooth, like so. We can see if there's any debris in the piston holes. It's got 3 little piston holes here. And what that'll do in the tuning options is that'll either vary the amount of holes or the size of the holes. Some cars even vary themselves the thickness of the piston as well. So we'll put that to the side, get our excess oil out. We'll go ahead and take our O-ring at the bottom of the cartridge like so. Very carefully. Wipe that over. You can see it's got a lot of dirt and stuff on it, which is what you'd expect. It's only a matter of time until that seeps through into the oil. And what that does is actually clags up your oil, changes the feeling of the damper unit, and causes unnecessary wear and tear on the body and the pistons itself. Okay, so now I'll go ahead, I'll lube up the O-ring and get that back together. I haven't gone as far as to repolish the shock shafts or anything like that, keeping in mind it's just a quick little service video. So I've got some grease in there, put a little bit of grease on the thread here, like so. Put a little bit on the thread. I'll just get this started, this cap, rotate it backwards until it clicks. If I can get it to start, like so, you just feel it. Get the excess grease off. Go ahead now, put my shaft through before I tighten up that collar, because that collar actually preloads and squeezes the O-ring a little bit on the shock shaft to help it seal better. There we go, take the grease off there, like so. We can go further now and do up this cartridge collar, cartridge cap. Wipe off the grease. Go ahead and put our eyelet back on the bottom. So you can see here, it's quite a simple process, but it does take some practice and some time to get right. So it's important just to take your time until you get it feeling right. There's no point putting together a shock or damp unit that's not right. It's as simple as taking it apart usually and rebleeding it. We're looking for 12 mil here with the verniers. Probably another half a turn up. So, how are we looking? A little bit more. That way I know that the car is going to be sitting as level as possible. There we go. 12 millimeters on the mark. I'll go ahead and start putting the oil in. Okay, so about halfway up the shaft, sorry, the shaft halfway into the body, put the oil in, and then down in one motion. Should all come up in one big bubble, like so. Continue to fill to the top, and then I'll just ever so smoothly just run it through its motions of travel. And again, if you get that nice big bubble out at the start, should cause it from turning to champagne or tiny little bubbles in the oil, which can take longer to clear. And that's looking really, really good. There's no bubbles in there, because what we want to do is get all the air out as possible. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I'll go ahead now and I'll put the bladder back in. I'll bleed that up until the piston hits my finger, like so. Go ahead and I'll put the cap on. All the while squeezing the excess oil and air out of the shock itself. There we go, got that together. And I'll give that a quick wipe over. Like so. Double check everything's nice and tight. Okay, and then we'll see how it feels. Now I expect it to be over full. As you can see here, it's coming out quite quickly. Not too bad, but we'll see if we can reduce that. So push the shock shaft in, hold it with my fingers, undo the top cap, like so. We'll feel the air come out, squeeze it up again, all while holding it. Let's see how we look. It's definitely getting better. We'll do it one more time. Squeeze it back down. Definitely getting there. We'll do it again. Doesn't matter as long as we get it right. There we go. Squeeze it up again. And there we go. It's not coming out at all now. Perfect. That's perfect. No rebound. That's what I refer to as a dead shock. You can in certain instances tune rebound into it, but not in this scenario. Okay, I'll put the top spring collar on, spring retainer. Then I'll go out onto the top and put in the preload collar. And then we have 2 units ready to be fitted back on the car. So let's get that on. All right. Get this cloth out the way, put this grease away. You can see how little grease we used. We'll zoom out again so we can see a bit more exactly what's going on. Okay. Put the lid on the grease, put that to the side. All right guys, here we go. So we'll get the shocks back on. So put the car onto the stand, and then I'll go ahead and put it on in the reverse order that we took it off. Left and right doesn't matter on this car. They don't usually on cars, but you can mark them if you would like to be that particular when you do it. A couple of 2mm screws here, putting it exactly where the screws were last time on the outside hole of the arm. Like so. Again, no need to over tighten any of these. These cars are so strong, they definitely do not fall apart. Bottom shock collar in, like so. These 9 steps hex wrenches are amazing, by the way, great value. Perfect little kit for working on these Kyosho Fazers. Okay, get our top shock mount on. Again, putting it in the same shock tower mount that it came out of. Last screw in, and then that is our rear shocks done. As easy as that. And it's not something that you probably have to do at the racetrack unless you're changing the thickness, the weight of the oil. But definitely between race meetings, or if it's had lots of batteries, if you've had a bad accident and it's leaking, it does pay to give it a bit of a service, just like we've done here. Hasn't taken too long. And I guarantee that the car's going to drive and perform a heck of a lot better now that we've got a full amount of oil back in the shocks. So, I'm Brett from Hearns, and thanks for watching me rebuild the shocks on the Kyosho Fazer.